NFL stars compared to their dads. The sons are ballers.
It's a handoff to Mark Ingram, bulldozing his way.
The dads were ballers.
The completion to Ingram, and he's in for the touchdown.
Some dudes turn out to be very similar to their fathers, while others are completely different. Today, we're going to look at 4 father-son combos, do a direct comparison from a physical and statistical point of view, and look at some interesting stories along the way. Now, before we dive in, this video is brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek has been awesome for me. I've gone to multiple games buying tickets through them, and they make the process so easy. They take tickets from all across the web and put them into one area, placing them on a scale from 1 to 100, with green meaning it's a good deal, and red meaning it's bad. If it's your first time with SeatGeek, use my promo code KTO for $20 off your first purchase. Big thanks to SeatGeek for the sponsor. Now let's get into the video. First up, we have the Metcalfs. DK Metcalf became an NFL icon in 2019. Coming out of college, he received a ton of hype after this photo surfaced. Due to his sheer size, combined with reports of him having 1.6% body fat, and he entered the realm of Sean Oakman level memes. This picture was such a big part of his storyline, it even went as far as to have him walk into Seattle's draft room shirtless after they picked him. Receivers just aren't built like this guy. But things start to make more sense when you find out that his dad, Terrence, was an offensive lineman. Terrence Metcalf played in Chicago for 7 seasons, starting 25 of 78 career games. What's interesting is Terrence isn't that old. He was drafted in the 3rd round in 2002 by the Chicago Bears. For context, Tom Brady was drafted in 2000. Terrence was never a Pro Bowl caliber guard, but he did get to experience being on a Super Bowl roster. The Bears made it back in 2007. It's pretty wild to think that the Bears made it all the way there with Rex Grossman at quarterback.
First sack of the night, and Grossman again can't find the handle.
Let's compare Terrence to his son. They both played for Ole Miss. You can say that Terrence had the better college career since he was 2-time first-team All-SEC and a first-team All-American in 2001. But DK showed more promise, so he was picked higher in the draft than his dad was. Comparing their size, Terrence had about 80 pounds on his son. But you have to keep in mind that NFL linemen eat more to sustain that type of weight. Although DK said himself that his body fat was under 2%, there is absolutely no way. Some of the best athletes tend to hover around the 6 to 13% mark. Nevertheless, he is still built like a monster.
I mean, I gave you 4 different, diverse individuals at the wide receiver spot who were very, very special. Yeah, so I'm saying, what is it that you're going to add that they never provided?
You haven't seen a 6'3", 230 run a 4.33 with a 40.5-inch vertical.
When describing how DK Metcalf was raised, it's tough to decipher what's fact and what's fiction. Whatever the truth is, here's the story of how he grew up. Terrence Metcalf bought his son a set of weights when he was 5 years old. By the time the kid was in kindergarten, he was benching 50 pounds and squatting 100 pounds. The Chicago Bears strength coach at the time told Terrence to stop, and he did, but he still had DK using resistance bands. By 13 years old, DK was competing in CrossFit tournaments, and before his senior year in high school, he was squatting 500 pounds, benching 275, and deadlifting 585. He approached athletics like a competitive weightlifter. When it turned out that he was a naturally gifted athlete as well, DK became a matchup nightmare in high school. Ultimately, DK's unique background has given him the tools to be one of the most mesmerizing players in the NFL. Up next, we have the Mannings.
No. Give me that ball.
On the basketball court, Peyton and Eli are 2 of the biggest noobs you've ever seen. On the football field, they're the most iconic brother duo in NFL history. It's no secret that their dad, Archie, played in the league as well. Archie Manning was the David Carr of the early New Orleans Saints. It was a new NFL franchise when he got there, and they struggled mightily to get on their feet. He spent 11.5 seasons there, and in that time, they never made the playoffs. Although they were never that good, it was clear to fans and other players how much of a talent Archie was. What was funny and kinda sad was that opposing defensive linemen like Jack Youngblood would take it easy on Manning because of how bad his offensive line thing was. This was during a time when players were trying to take each other's heads off, yet dudes felt bad enough for Archie that they wouldn't hit him that hard. When you hear how his career went in New Orleans, it's more understandable why Eli didn't want to go to the Chargers. Even after the Mannings told San Diego that he wouldn't play for them, they drafted Eli anyway. It proceeded with this classic awkward photo. As the story goes, he was traded on draft day to the Giants in exchange for Phillip Rivers. Turned out, the Mannings were right all along. Let's compare Archie to his sons. Peyton and Eli turned out to be 6'5" compared to Archie's 6'3" frame. Eli followed in his dad's footsteps by going to Ole Miss, as opposed to Peyton going to their rival Tennessee. They were all ballers. Each of them were a top 3 Heisman finalist at some point. Even more impressive, Archie went number 2 overall in the draft. Then both of his sons went number 1 in their respective drafts. Stylistically, Archie Manning was more of a scrambling and improvised type of player. He played in a triple option-like system in college, then used his elusiveness to his advantage in the pros. Although he is clearly more athletic than his sons, both Peyton and Eli had a much more refined pocket presence and rhythm by the time they were coming into the NFL. Then, with how athletic the game has become, it's probably for the better that they didn't try and run more often.
And he's going to run for a first down. He's going to try to get out of bounds, and then he's bounced back.
If you were to rank their NFL careers, it would look like this. Obviously, Peyton and Eli were very fortunate that their dad was an NFL quarterback. That experience alone played a major part in the development of their games. One of the more intriguing storylines in the upcoming years will be Archie's grandson, Arch Manning, his oldest son Cooper's kid. Cooper was Archie's most athletic son, but he was diagnosed with spinal stenosis in high school and had to stop playing football altogether. His son Arch was a freshman quarterback in high school this last football season. Apparently, he may end up being the best of them all. Following the Mannings, we have the Humphreys. Marlon Humphrey has emerged as a star for the Baltimore Ravens. The cornerback's dominant 2019 campaign earned him first-team All-Pro. Before he was a standout for the Ravens, Marlon played for Alabama, just like his father Bobby. Bobby Humphrey played running back for the Crimson Tide. At one point, he was Alabama's all-time leading rusher.
It is Humphrey. Cutting back at a tremendous hole as he breaks free. Bobby Humphrey loose. They won't catch him. Bobby Humphrey.
From that same game that Bobby ran for 220 yards against Penn State, I saw this unbelievable 2-point conversion. It has nothing to do with this video, but I've never seen anything like it.
And around. Whitehurst.
Wide open.
Smith to throw a block. Whitehurst throwing it into the end zone, complete.
He threw it left-handed.
Whitehurst threw the ball left-handed to number 81.
Anyways, Bobby went on to be selected in the supplemental draft by the Denver Broncos. He became a star right away, finishing top 10 in the league in rushing yards. He would have been Rookie of the Year if it wasn't for another guy you may have heard of. The following year, Bobby once again played well as he was selected to the 1990 Pro Bowl. Despite all this early success, things fell apart rather quickly. Bobby became the perfect example of the worst case scenario from holding out. The story goes that he decided to hold out during training camp of his 3rd season. By week 13, he still didn't have a new contract, and the Broncos' backup turned out to be good enough that the team wasn't concerned about re-signing Bobby. He had no choice but to return. When he did, he was out of shape and served as the backup. He was out of Denver after that season, and after 1 year in Miami, he never played in the NFL again. Bobby's time playing football ended on a sour note, but the future is bright, especially for his second son, Marlon, who looks exactly like him. When Marlon was young, he played running back like his dad, but around 8th grade, Bobby decided to move his son away from running the ball and molded him into a defensive back. One can only speculate as to why he had his son switch positions. They both ended up being around the same height and weight. Marlon actually was quite a bit faster than his dad. In fact, Marlon had elite level speed by the time he was in high school. He competed at the 2013 World Youth Championships and took the silver medal in the hurdles. It's safe to say Bobby switching his son from playing running back was a wise decision. Marlon Humphrey should be an excellent cornerback in the NFL for a long time. Knock on wood.
Had it, lost it, and is picked up by the Ravens. And running in is Marlon Humphrey for the touchdown.
Lastly, we have the Ingrams. Mark Ingram Jr. is a solid running back for the Baltimore Ravens. He was the first Heisman winner ever at Alabama and has thrived as a power back in the NFL going on 10 years. Interesting enough, his dad, Mark Ingram Sr., played wide receiver in the league for a decade. Mark Sr. played college ball for Michigan State. One of the assistant coaches while he played there was Nick Saban, who recruited his son to Alabama years later. Mark Sr. had his moments in the NFL. He was a member of the New York Giants when they won the Super Bowl in 1991. Later on in his career, he played for Miami, and despite never being a 1,000-yard receiver, in 1994, Mark Ingram Sr. would have one of the greatest single-game pop-offs in NFL history. Here is his full season stats from 1994. Now, watch this.
7 of 14, 84 yards, but picked off twice by Brian Washington and by James Hastings. The 3, and there's Baxter in for the touchdown. In each situation, the completion to Ingram, and he's in for the touchdown. Good second effort by Mark Ingram. Marino. Beautiful catch by Ingram. The 17-yard line, and Marino throwing for the end zone. Touchdown! Mark Ingram with his second touchdown of the game. 28. The Jet lead is down to 10, and Marino throws for the end zone. Touchdown! Once again, it is Mark Ingram.
Want the ball in their hands. This is the kind of games they just love to have.
Ingram is split to the left. Timeout to go. Marino getting the protection again. And he is able to complete. Nice move by Ingram. The 18-yard line. And Marino completes inside the 10. Has a first down. Ingram again. Stopped by Glenn.
Marino's trying to get everybody on the line of scrimmage. Now he still has one timeout. They'll save that for the field goal if they have to.
We are seeing another spectacular effort by Marino, who fires. Touchdown!
You know what the Jets were thinking? He's going to take the ball and throw it into the ground.
They stopped.
They all stopped.
Not only was that game amazing, Mark Ingram Sr. got to be part of Dan Marino's most iconic play, the fake spike. The crazy part is this wasn't even Mark Ingram's most famous play. That's coming up later. First, let's get back to the comparisons. When looking at Mark Sr. next to his son, Mark Jr. is slightly shorter and thicker. He's definitely more of a workhorse back looking to grind out a few more yards, whereas Mark Sr. had more of a graceful athleticism. Mark Jr. had a more prolific college career, won the Heisman Trophy, and was part of a national championship. Despite the differences in production, these two were both selected first round, 28th overall in their respective drafts. This marked the first time ever that a father-son duo was selected with the exact same pick. Looking at their NFL careers, Mark Jr. has been the better pro. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler and is still going strong. Even though his dad never made a Pro Bowl or had a 1,000-yard season, he still has something his son has not achieved, a Super Bowl ring. And in that game, he did his part. He made one of the most iconic plays in Super Bowl history.
3rd and 13 at the 32-yard line. Hostetler throwing, it's caught by Ingram. He has to get to the 19 for a first down, and he does. Oh. If the Giants win this game, they may look back to this catch and run by Mark Ingram.